Across the multiple dimensions, from the vast overworlds to the darkest dungeons, the worlds of Final Fantasy are full with creatures ranging from the cute to the downright disturbing. Welcome to Monster Files. Today's creature we're going to talk about is a personal favourite of mine. The deceptive, weak, slow-looking, and almost cute Tonberry. Now, while I personally find these green menaces absolutely adorable, they are far from it. The iconic look of a Tonberry has remained relatively unchanged since their first appearance in Final Fantasy V. Dressed in a hooded robe with beady yellow eyes that they use to pierce through the darkness of their dungeons, the Tonberries can more often than not be found wearing a hooded brown robe and carrying but two things: their signature weapon, the chef's knife, and a lantern, both of which can be absolutely deadly in combat. What makes this green menace so threatening? What do they have in their arsenal that separates them from the imps, the bombs, the corals, the other creatures that roam the worlds of Final Fantasy? Well, for one, they have the iconic chef knife. When a Tonberry uses chef knife, it will slowly, very slowly, edge towards their opponent, taking turn after turn in the turn-based battle games, or seemingly looking like they're miles away in more recent games. When a Tonberry eventually reaches its target, it will stab them, dealing massive damage. If you are unprepared for the attack, it will easily wipe out a party member. And usually, when they stab, the signature word, doink, appears. As well as that, the Tonberry has another signature move called Everybody's Grudge. Now, Everybody's Grudge may vary from game to game, but the standard is a Tonberry will deal set damage for each enemy that you have killed within that game. So if you have been level grinding or farming enemies for an item and killing monster after monster, Everybody's Grudge is your karma. The more enemies you've killed, the more powerful the Tonberry move will be. Now for my favourite part. As with any iconic creature in Final Fantasy, there will be notable appearances. A time when a Tonberry has took a star role in a game almost. They've got what they deserve because they are purely awesome. I want to talk first about King Tonberry, a creature from Final Fantasy VIII. King Tonberry can be found in the Cetra ruins, and it can be found by killing, I believe it's 20 Tonberries in battle, and that will activate the boss fight against King Tonberry. Killing 20 Tonberries is not an easy feat, and fighting the King Tonberry himself, definitely not easy. However, you are rewarded for your actions once you have managed to defeat the King Tonberry, as you will be given a Tonberry as a guardian force, and you can summon this Tonberry at any time to come into battle and help you out with its signature move, Chef's Knife. I'd also like to mention the giant Tonberry from Final Fantasy X-2. Not that it was an iconic appearance of it, but seeing a Tonberry of this size and this magnitude terrified me my first time playing, and it was not an easy battle to accomplish. Once again in Final Fantasy Crisis Core, the Tonberry returned as a summon to help the party. And when Zack summoned the Tonberry, an hilarious cutscene shows up, where the Tonberry will actually go for Zack, but trip, causing his knife to fall into the enemy that Zack is facing. Thus, the Tonberry is like an accidental ally in that game. Now, the most recent appearance comes from the Final Fantasy VII Remake. There was a surprise boss fight against the Tonberry, which I was not expecting, with this game solely being set at the beginning of the original. And fighting this Tonberry in action combat did not make it any less menacing. The Tonberry was still slow and almost creepy in a way, and it would slowly edge towards a party member and again doink them. In Final Fantasy XV, however, the Tonberries took a different turn, They became fast, agile, and the best way I can describe them, the way they flipped about with their little chef's knives and their lanterns, they almost became little versions of Yoda. And a fast Tonberry is not something I ever wanted to see. While I would probably need a full video to talk about the lore of the Tonberry in Final Fantasy XIV, I'm going to do my best to give you a brief overlay of what happened to the Tonberries in that game. However, we have to start from the beginning. Long ago in the land of Eorzea, there was a civilization called Nim. Nim was home to scholars. They studied healing magic. At this time, there was a war going on between the Black and the White Mages, the War of Magi. Now, I believe the story goes that a merchant from Mac came and he gave the people of Nim something. Once opened, caused a curse, and the people of Nim were slowly morphed and transformed into what we now know as Tonberries. The people of Nim sealed themselves away in the Wanderer's Palace, and there they stayed for hundreds of years. And the King Tonberry's rancor became so strong that the Tonberries became enraged. When a party of adventurers went into the Wanderer's Palace, they were stalked by something known as the Stalker Tonberry, a Tonberry enemy that cannot be targeted, that will follow you around the dungeon, and if you get too close, it attacks. While this isn't too much of an issue these days, back when in around Reborn, when this dungeon first hit, getting hit by that Tonberry would take a shed ton of health. A party of adventurers defeated the King Tonberry, thus ending his rancor and rage, and the Tonberries began to live in peace within the Wanderer's Palace. However, their peace was short-lived. To read you an extract from the lore for Wanderer's Palace Hard. Bound no more by the rancor of the fallen king, the Tonberries have regained their senses with a little help from devoted friends. Yet all thoughts of peace have been put to the blade. A band of Mammal Jar mercenaries, known as the Silver Scales, have stormed the walls and seized the palace for their own. Someone must stop these sellswords from turning the Wanderer's Palace into an unassailable fortress and take a stand against Tonberry slaughter. And once the adventurers storm Wanderer's Palace yet again and get rid of the Silver Scale threat, the Tonberries are at peace again, but not before. They take sinister revenge on those that slaughtered and enslaved their brethren. I only hope that these fierce little green creatures will continue to show up in the vast worlds of Final Fantasies in future games, as I like the Tonberries. I think in a strange, sinister way they are adorable. They are literally one of my favourite creatures of all time. I'd love to explore more of Nim in 14 and more of what happened to them. But the question is, will we ever get a full Nim and War of Magi storyline? Will the Tonberries ever come into any other storyline other than the Wanderer's Palace and the Scholar Quest lines? And what do future games hold for these fierce denizens of the dark? This has been Stardust88 with his Final Fantasy Monster Files. If you'd like to see more of me playing Final Fantasy XIV or any Final Fantasy game for that matter, check the link below and follow us on Twitch. And if you have another creature that you'd like me to cover in the Monster Files, then by all means, please leave a comment below and let me know what you'd like to see. Remember, adventurers, stay safe and forever walk in the light of the crystal.